Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Slip Safety Show. I'm Christian Harris and I'm the host of the show and also the founder of Slip Safety Services. My guest today is slightly out of left field. It's a more tangential look at risk. It's a guy called David McLean, who is a good friend of mine and somebody that I've been working with in the risk management field for a couple of years now. David specialises in mental health, resilience and performance. He's got a fascinating background as a Royal Marine Commando, which we touch on a little bit in the conversation, and he's just launched a new online system which I think could be of benefit to you, my audience, particularly in these kind of challenging times where, staying on top of our mental health is a challenge, particularly acutely at the moment. I mean, it's something that many people struggle with at the best of times, but we're in very, very strange times now, of course. So I hope you get some value from this, and David's contact details and a link to his new online program are included at the end of the video slash podcast as well. As always, if you find this useful, I'd really appreciate if you could introduce it to anybody you know that might find it beneficial too. And we'd really love it if you could subscribe so that you get notified of all future episodes coming up. Anyway, enough from me. Let's get on to the conversation with David McLean. Well, David McLean, welcome to the Slip Safety Show.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Good to have you here. And I thought that particularly in the kind of unprecedented and hugely challenging times that we're all living in at the moment, that it would be really useful to have your input as a specialist on mental health and performance. So do you want to give people a very quick overview of who you are, and then we'll get into what you do and start asking you some probing questions?
Yeah, of course. No, thank you. Yes. So for the last 8 to 10 years, I've a qualified senior now psychotherapist, and most of my life is, I suppose, in the recent terms, has been revolved around helping people. I have a real passion for helping people and waking people up, if you like, helping with all sorts of issues that they have. And I've been doing that individually for quite a few years through private healthcare, working. I became a chief executive association in terms of psychotherapy, clinical hypnotherapy, clinical supervisor, lectured on it for a good few years as well, run separate businesses. It was my understanding of people, understanding of what makes people tick, why people don't perform as well as they are, and particularly in light of what's going on at the moment, why people are stuck and paralysed by fear, actually, and of course, importantly, what to do about it. So I've moved on from the kind of the clinical work, although I still use that the basis of what we do, and we work in businesses, not so much at the moment, although there's quite a lot actually still to be done, and with people online, etc. But we work with businesses, helping them with performance, mental health, mental well-being, emotional well-being, creating change. We do a lot of online programs actually as well.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the short or medium term, if you like. A lot of where I come from, I suppose, that the foundations of who I am. I was a former Royal Marine as well, Royal Marines Commando for 15 years, and certainly I think maybe we'll discuss and talk a little about this, but anyway, I found that the foundations of that has certainly helped me to it's helped and hasn't helped actually sometimes, ironically in some ways, but it's helped me to focus and to recognise what's necessary. And today, just obviously before we go on, one of the most famous statements is adapt and overcome. It's one of the most, well, there's very many famous of quotes and statements that the Marines use, and I think it's very relevant today that businesses, if we want to survive, and people, if they want to create, we must take, of course, the coronavirus seriously, but we must adapt and overcome. We must do what's necessary.
Yeah. And so did you have an interest in this kind of field before you went into the Marines, or was that something that developed afterwards? And if the latter, was that, your experience in the Marines kind of drove you towards it in some way, do you think?
Yeah, I still remember the day, Christian. I remember it vividly. I was in Stonehouse Barracks, which is in Plymouth, for those of you people that know that or don't know that. There's a big Royal Marines contingent down in the southwest of England. I remember standing there on the parade ground, the car park stroke parade ground, and thinking there's something else. I should be doing something different. And at that point, I didn't know what that was, but I knew it was helping people in some way. So I thought, well, I better get some sort of qualification in helping people. So I went to the Open University and studied psychology when I was still in, because I had time to kind of do that. If you like, started reading about Freud, because that's what you do when you don't know anything else about psychology. I've certainly moved on from that now. And just started going through different sort of areas of the degree, and then really enjoyed evolutionary psychology, which has really helped actually as things have moved on, and the understanding of what's going on and how that evolutionary traits that we have, how they still affect us today. And then vocational training, obviously, and so I could get out and start practicing. As I was leaving the Marines into the big bad world, as at that time the sole breadwinner, the main breadwinner of my household. So I had to get something to get out, and so I had that, I suppose, fear, if you like, with me as well. And it's not until later on, when you're in the Royal Marines, particularly a few years ago, 20 years ago, then you were encouraged, because of what was going on in Northern Ireland, to make sure that you didn't talk about what you did. Right. So it was kind of inbred in us, if you like. So actually, it was not something that I used much, or certainly didn't tell many people about. And it's kind of, I've left that career and I've moved on to psychology, etc. And it's just in more recent years, I mean, I'm probably saying the last 5-8 years. So, but in more recent years that I've started to sort of really pull in the best of which I should be doing. I've been doing it all the time. Really pull in what the best of the Marines gives is the leadership aspects, the management, understanding and what it takes to win, what performance, of course, is all about, how to reach and stay at peak performance, if you like. Because as you know, as we've talked about often, mental health, mental well-being, yes, you can be down, as you know, always scale people 0 to 10, 0 being the lowest and 10 being the best, if you like. The zeros, ones and twos, I mean, that's the low places, and that's what people talk about mental ill health. People who are very depressed, anxious, etc. But of course, we all want to be better versions of ourselves, and whether we're a 2 or a 9. So it's about understanding how the people work and understanding how to make those changes, how to become a better version of yourself, and that is what the therapy and the science and the behavioural, the human behaviour aspects that we use within business and help. So yes, to kind of, I suppose, in a roundabout, to answer your question, yeah, I've always taken, I suppose, subconsciously, what the Royal Marines has given me in terms of moving on in business, but brought it more consciously over the last 5-8 years.
Yeah. That story reminds me of something I was listening to on a podcast, and it was a guy who ended up being, I think he was the chairman and CEO of a big advertising agency in Australia. And he kind of started in a not the best background in terms of schooling and things like that. So I don't think he was kind of, destined for success, shall we say. But he got a job as a lorry driver or something like that when he left school. And he said he just remembers vividly one day kind of being partway through some sort of shipment or something, and just sort of sitting up and thinking, this isn't where I belong, I shouldn't be doing this, and drove the lorry back and basically handed the keys in and went off and ended up then knocking doors around Sydney and getting into advertising and working his way all the way up from basically the mailroom to being the top man. And it's really interesting how sometimes you have these kind of moments of clarity where suddenly something becomes clear, maybe not necessarily what you're going to be doing is clear, but that actually what you're currently doing perhaps isn't the best thing. In terms of, it's interesting because I think, if we think about high performance teams, lots of people will use the analogy of an F1 team and they'll think about pit stops and things like that. But I guess the other one would be the Marines. And I'm sure I saw something that the cost of training one of you guys was or is, hundreds of thousands or millions or something, some ridiculous amount of money. And then that kind of, people juxtapose that with, well, if you don't spend any money training your staff and you don't really help them and support them, are you surprised that they don't really perform that well?
Yeah. Yeah, apologies, you broke up slightly there. I caught just the last little bit, if you don't mind just saying that
Oh,
again. Apologies.
I was saying that it's interesting how the cost of training and support that the Marines get is so huge, and often people kind of they put the Marines out there as like this really high performing team, which of course they are, but then they kind of wonder why they can't get high performance in their own businesses or their own lives when they don't actually invest the time and the effort and the cost of trying to do something better.
No, absolutely, yeah, and it's not always as a well-known fact, but the Royal Marines specifically have the longest and arguably the most arduous basic training in the world of any armed forces whatsoever, and that obviously costs a little bit of money to produce the Royal Marine at the end of it, if you like, as well. And what you get is a very capable individual at the end of. And no, I completely agree. And people know this, but without individuals in a business is just a brick and mortar edifice. You know, it's nothing without its people. Now, that's nothing new, and most people will go, yeah, well, obviously. However, people often, business leaders, still don't often realise just what they should be doing to invest in their people, and just how much value they get from that. It's absolutely everything. It's completely. I mean, it's everything, and it's important because kind of the way, if we kind of look at it from a psychological point of view, again, I use my scaling of 0 to 10, 0 being the lowest. Zeros, ones, and twos are people who may have signed off from work, as for a long-term sickness, you know, depression, whatever it is. People in threes, fours, fives, sixes, are in an area called presenteeism, which means that you're at work but you're not functioning fully. And then sevens, eights, or eights, nines, and tens is where you want people to be because they are productive. And what we want to recognise that by investing in people, by investing in your staff, again, nothing new there, but investing properly in the staff, then everybody will naturally move up the scaling. The fours will become fives and sixes, the sevens will become eights and nines, the twos will become fours and threes and fours, or whatever it may well be.
Yeah.
And that's directly linked to productivity. Because the happier you are, you create more serotonin, endorphins, dopamine, etc. The body produces more of that. And that is directly linked to motivation. So the happier you are, the more motivated you are.
Yeah, that makes me think of a couple of sayings that I've heard. I can't remember them exactly, so I'll butcher them. But one of them is that you're the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. And then another one that I like is a guy called Daniel Priestley, who you and I have seen speak at an event before, and he says environment dictates performance. So both of those, I guess, are all about, you know, if you can have that group being in a more positive space, that kind of lifts everyone else up around you.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And what I'm all about, though, you know, Christian, is the individual, and the individual helps to promote a better team, and which promotes a better department, which promotes a better business. I completely agree with you. And of course, environments needs to be set, and that's are the leadership doing the right things? Is the working conditions, you know, quite simply correct or safe, as you know? But yeah, it's about the individual as well. That's where we want to start recognizing, as you know, my famous sort of quotes that I like to use, which is absolutely, it's so important to recognize that our thoughts are what is creating how we feel, and how we feel, good or bad, is determining and what we do, you know, how we act, of course, and the actions that we produce. And then, of course, that determines what results we get. So it's not about creating a team of individuals, you know, like, oh, no, we don't want to have teamwork. We want individuals. No, obviously, it is. It's not taken away from that, but it's recognising that the mental well-being of each and every individual is what comes together and creates that whole.
Yeah, and that kind of maxim of yours is, you know, it's so simple, and I think that's the power of any good maxims. They have to be simple to understand and really cut through to to the point. And so using that then as a kind of a premise, and given the backdrop of the enormous struggles that a lot of people are facing at the moment, I mean, what sort of advice would you be giving people on an individual basis right now, that might be struggling a bit, or might be kind of on the sort of teetering on the edge of maybe starting to struggle with everything that's going on?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, one of the maxims, one of the points that I bring out is that change is really simple. It really is, and not necessarily easy. In fact, the majority of the time, it's not an easy thing to do. So when we find ourselves in this situation that we're all in at the moment, we often know what we should be doing, although often we don't at the moment. There's still some unknowns, but there is things that we can do. There is things that we know that we should be doing. There's things that the government are asking us to do. And if we were honest, how many of us are doing them? And the premise is, and when I go back to that point I was talking about earlier on about evolutionary psychology, the vast majority of the brain doesn't know that we're sitting in the UK or wherever we're watching this, wherever the individuals are watching and listening to this, in the 21st century. The vast majority of the brain is subconscious, so underneath the level of consciousness. So it doesn't really know what's happening. We do prefrontal cortex, conscious working memory. It sits at the front of our brain here. We're well aware of what's going on, of course, but the vast machine, the habitual behaviour, etc., that drives us, doesn't have a clue what we're doing. So it's just going off automatic responses. It's just going off what's necessary and what we've done before. It works off fear and doesn't necessarily move sort of forward. So it'll just keep going round and round and round. So that's a positive and profound, I suppose, to an extent, evolutionary trait that we have, that we do not need to think through everything. However, when it comes to a point when we want to make change, when it comes to a point that we do actually want to start to think about things and consciously make changes, then our habitual behaviour has been doing certain things for quite a while. But we need to sort of recognise it, and again, as I say, it's not rocket science. It really, really isn't. And there's three key areas that we need to recognise. What we've talked about before, that's serotonin production, being healthier and happier and more productive view. And then the three kind of key areas that we want to sort of look at to make sure that you become that better version of yourself, so that you are able to cope better. You're able to cope with physical pain, actually, people dealing with that. You're able to cope with either self-isolation or, as lovely as it can be, stuck in the same house with all your family for 2 weeks without a break, whatever these things. The coping mechanisms that you need for that as well. And that doesn't include alcohol, of course. It's the personal coping mechanisms. I've heard that alcohol sales have went up dramatically.
I've certainly ordered a few bottles of wine, I must admit.
Yeah, I've heard different figures, but it's gone up by a huge percentage. And of course, what we want to do is be able to cope with it personally on our own. And as I said, there's three ways to do that. So it's thinking positively, positive interaction, and physical activity. The 3 Ps is what I call it. So as the government's saying, as Boris Johnson was telling us before he went into isolation, you can still go outside once a day for exercise. And that's not just, oh, well, why not? We may as well do it. It's tremendously important. We've been creating serotonin, for instance, year dot for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. It's what allows us to evolve and become the people that we are today, and how we live our life today. It creates the ability to cope, as I've said already. It creates the ability to do different things. It balances us out. It allows us to be calm, relaxed, but also motivated for whatever it is that we need to do as well. So physical activity is so important. Positive thinking, of course, as well. If you remember, thoughts create feelings, feelings create actions, actions then produce your results. So what results are you wanting at the end of this 3-week period, or now that we're here? And we're going to obviously hear from the government again, and there's a good chance that we'll be doing exactly the same for another 3-week period. So what results do you want at the end of that? Where do you want your business to be sitting? And what can you do Marines adapt and overcome. What can you think about? If whatever you're thinking about, the story that you're telling yourself will make you feel in a particular way, which will either make you do things or not do things, which will give you results that are no different than before, you don't want, or something different. What is it you're thinking about? It's tremendously important that we think positively. And it's not one of these memes, you know, I'll go on social media and just, I mean, on my feed, it's like that anyway. It's just positive quote after positive quote after positive quote. I love a positive quote, you know, that's what I'm all about. But, you know, there's a lot more to it than that. And it's not just about, and it's also not about saying you're positive when you're not. Oh, you know, that happy face, oh, everything's good, you know, and it's not about being negative, but it's recognizing, it's about recognizing where you are and being okay with that. You know, you've heard these kind of things before, but it's tremendously important. Recognizing where you are and thinking about what you do want, not what you don't want. And
positive from the perspective of moving forwards in a positive way, not necessarily sort of trying to come across as being positive, you know, and give that outward appearance, but actually in your mind, you know, having that mindset, right, I'm moving forwards with whatever it is, but I'm moving forwards in a positive way.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about that. It's all about how you feel. It doesn't matter what you're saying to other people. And of course, we might all at times have to go, no, I'm feeling really good, because you just want to get on with your day, and you don't want to have the conversation about why you're not feeling very good. But we don't want that mask. We want to feel. Feeling is what is the key. How are you feeling? What you're doing is we often look to the future with optimism and enthusiasm, and that's important, obviously, but the way that you change the future is now. We don't need to get into quantum physics or metaphysics in this lesson, sorry, this call, maybe on another one, but you know, there is no future in that sense, but it's all about the moment and all about now, and that's what gives you the future. The feeling. So it's about feeling good now, it's about feeling good in the moment and doing the things that make you feel good, and of course that's thinking about what you do want. And then, as I say, the third one is positive interaction. I am self-isolating at the moment, so I understand that as much as anyone, and I get serotonin, if you like, or pleasure and interacting with people through Zoom and FaceTime and all these different things, and that's about it at the moment. But of course, when you make sure that you're feeling good in general, then you're able to be in that positive place.
Yeah. So in terms of like practical, that's a really good overview, and I think that's really going to be powerful for people to hear. Is there any kind of tips or hints or sort of practical exercises that people could be potentially looking at, or is there anything, you know, content-wise that you've developed that people could be gorging on at the moment to kind of try and help them maintain I suppose more the one of the P's around the positive mindset, you know, the physical activity and the positive interactions, kind of they need to get on with that themselves, but you know, is there anything that people could be doing practically around the mindset piece?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Those three areas, so keeping active, those three areas, they're important, and I know you understand that, obviously. And again, it's not rocket science. The healthy eating, I don't know how many of your viewers and listeners are interested in meditation or mindfulness, and it took me a little while I'm a kind of a scientific type individual. It took me a little while to get to that kind of point, but you know, meditation or relaxing, taking time out is tremendously important as well. And again, it sounds a little bit philosophical, but remember who you are. Remember that you have been through challenges before. Remember the strength that you have. Remember your ability to adapt and overcome. And remember these things before, because yes, it's unprecedented times, of course, but most of us, certainly the adults, you know, that have been around for a little while, we've been through some challenging times before. So sort of remember that aspect as well. And yes, as you know, of course, I have a new online program that's actually been launched this Monday, Monday the 6th of April.
So by the time this gets released, it'll be live, because we're recording this on Saturday the 4th, so I think I don't think I'll be able to get it live and by Monday the 6th. But so tell us about that then, David.
Yeah, thank you. So it's feelgood.drmgroup.co.uk. And it's all about feeling good. It's all about recognizing that you can be a different person. You can be a better version of yourself. You can create lasting positive change in your life. So it's a 16-day online wellbeing program. There is unique daily videos that you go through, of course, and then a daily action sheet as well, which has different components to it. There's a bit of relaxation, meditation, and positive visualization within there. There's a gratitude diary, which again, it's all about focusing on what you do want, what you're grateful for, what you're happy about. It changes who you are. Think and reflect questions, which is about, again, relevant to the content of the day and helping you move forward, and a few other bits and pieces as well that all can be completed in 15 minutes in a day as well, which is really good.
So that is really practical and pragmatic then, because it's nobody's going to be sitting down and doing 3 or 4 hour well, I don't know, some people are running 3 or 4 hour webinars at the moment, but I don't think realistically, certainly if you've got kids, you just won't have the time for that, so that's good.
Exactly. And people are working people are busy at work and they're doing all these things, but the program as well, we talk about, it's the first an introduction, of course, but then we're straight into goal setting. What is it you want to do? People don't talk about that. No. I mean, we don't really set goals for where we want to go, short, medium, and of course sometimes we have longer term goals, but but goal setting, how's your brain working, why are you behaving the way that you're doing? It's all about understanding who you are, why you're doing what you're doing, and importantly, how you can change. There's support as well offered. There's online bits and pieces in there. So feelgood.drmgroup.co.uk.
Okay, fantastic. What's the cost of that, and how do people?
Oh yes, that's important, isn't it? It's half price at the moment. It's only £49. There's a lot.
That's very good value.
Yeah, there's a huge amount that you get for that. So the feedback so far, obviously I've done a lot of different things. The feedback is very positive.
Yeah, good. And you and I met because we both work with some insurance companies, and that's how we originally met. And so I think it's probably worth underscoring that what you do is supported by the insurance community, because they're seeing the value of this and the importance of it to society as a whole. Because I don't know what your view on this is, but I feel that there's been leaps and bounds of progression around the kind of understanding and importance of mental health, and actually the nuances of it over the last even 2 years, never mind the last 5 to 10 years, because I think we've gone from mental health being somebody who's depressed only, and only really thinking about mental health as somebody that's a 1 or 2 on your scale, into this kind of 4s, 5s, 6s, I think was your range of the presenteeism point, and that's the majority of people, and that's where productivity doesn't exist, and so on and so forth.
No, absolutely. And statistically speaking, the number of absentees that you have is going to be, you're going to be 3 or 4 times the amount of that in terms of in that presenteeism area. And of course, at the moment, there's going to be a huge amount more than that. So if you've got say 10, I mean, obviously, you can do the math, but if you've got 10 off, at the moment, there's going to be 40 members of your staff at least, and probably up to 60 to 80 at the moment that are in that position and functioning well.
And I think we can all, I mean, I can certainly recognize that, because I know just within myself that some days I'm just not quite firing on all cylinders as I would on a normal day or on a good day, and you have the kind of ups and downs, and so it's about trying to shake yourself out of that, or actually sometimes just thinking, I'm having I've been grafting away this morning, and this is one of the advantages of having your own business, I suppose, but actually today's not a great day. Why don't I go for a walk, or why don't I go and play snooker, or why don't I go and do something that's going to be positive on one of the P's to try and get me back in the groove for the following day.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I say, when you're being paid to be at your desk from 9 to 5, then I recognise that you have to be there. But from a wider point of view, if people can sort of realise, again, sounds as if it's out there, but it really isn't. That if allow people who are in business, they want autonomy, they want trust, that and they don't always get that. And sometimes a bit of fresh air will allow you to recoup yourself and move up. Sometimes that exercise at lunchtime, instead of having to sit at your desk because everybody else is, and have lunch there, and because there's so much to do, that bike ride or the run at lunchtime, if you have an hour, if you have lucky enough to have that, and it just refreshes you, and it's vitally important. And this kind of archaic understanding that people must be chained to the desk and put, it's not all, many businesses that don't do that, but pushing, trying to get everything out of an individual, in that sense, it just doesn't work.
Yeah. Do you think that this whole coronavirus crisis and the way that, clearly it's going to have a massive effect generally on lots of things, but do you think there'll be an increased awareness off the back of this around this issue of mental health?
Increased awareness of mental health in general, sorry.
Yeah, and just the importance of it, and maybe a bit more flexibility, like you say, around, not being chained to your desk, and understanding that, perhaps that isn't the best way.
Absolutely. Matt Hancock, the health secretary, is pledged, gave £5 million to the Mind mental health charity. I think that was yesterday. I heard about that. And of course, it's better than nothing, but it's a drop in the ocean. And he was speaking and was well aware that the fallout, so to speak, in terms of the mental health will move on. And what I plead and hope for, and I will certainly support and be there, is that, the NHS has been underfunded in this particular area for a long time, vastly underfunded. And it is, it's my thing, as you can tell, but it is the foundation of everything. What we're thinking is the foundation for everything. Exercise is important, but what are you thinking? Work is important, but how are you thinking before you get there? It's absolutely everything. So good mental well-being is the foundation for everything. So, I believe, and I think there's reason for it, that it should have the most money spent on it, because it's a foundation, it's a starting point for everything. So why not fund it correctly? And there will be fallout from it, and it's something that business owners and leaders, I'm sure they will, but we'll need to recognise, and not almost kind of, once we all go back to normal, which I don't think is a very a good statement, actually, right. A good way to talk about it, because what is norm? But once we go back to that relative day in, day out aspect, which of course there will be changes, I believe, in society globally and locally, but there'll still be a back to relative aspect of normalness in that way. But just sort of, when that happens, not brushing this under the carpet and thinking, well, we just need to get back down to business again, which of course you do. Of course, businesses need to make money, absolutely. But how productive are the staff? How affected have they been? Because if you can spend that bit of time, effort and money on the staff, then you can bring them to where they need to be, and you'll be ultimately, your results will be 10 times better.
Much better, yeah. Okay, and from a business perspective, then, if you've got business leaders watching or listening to this, you've talked a bit about things from a personal perspective. What's your kind of offering in terms of, if I was running a bank, let's say, and I've got 25,000 employees, how could you help me to improve the mental health and the performance of my team? How would that kind of work at a sort of headline level?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have many different programs that we work with businesses, and we can work with businesses up at any level at all. The programs that are kind of our cultural programs, or human behavioural programs, if you like. So we go in generally into businesses. This is a general kind of statement. We're with businesses and work with them for a minimum of 6 months, 6 to 12 months, often 24, and really starting to work and understand. We work with surveys, different bits and pieces, get an understanding of where the business is. where the red, amber, green, RAG report, or where the hot spots are, if you like, understanding where the issues are, and then bespoke programs are written for those businesses around mental health, mental well-being, performance, etc.
Yeah.
They obviously vary in different ways, but the leadership perhaps could do with that online work, face-to-face workshops, and we're talking generally here pre-COVID or post-COVID-19, and perhaps the online or the face-to-face or front-facing sales team could do with some work, if you like, and also they're supported by technology as well, our app that supports the whole business. So it's really working with the individual and the business as a whole, moving them forward.
Yeah. Okay.
We're obviously working with businesses still at the moment, and from the online point of view, it's more challenging as everything is, but we adapt and overcome, and we're running programs at the moment in that same particular way for specific departments, and so a business that needs to get the sales department working better, or the leadership, whatever, and we're running programs, and there's kind of a key point as well that was brought out in another podcast or another system that I was working with, is that businesses on average have 27 days worth of cash. And I think that was last week. So there were about 3 weeks worth of cash left in the business. So the turnaround, the importance of acting now and not going, well, we'll do bits and pieces, but the government will sort us out. It's time to act now and make sure that you save your business, and the performance of the staff, of course, and other business aspects is vitally important.
Yeah. Last question. There's been a lot of, or I've been seeing a lot around this whole mental health first aid phenomenon, which is, again, seems to have developed exponentially over the last couple of years. I mean, I assume that has some value. You'll tell me what you think. I mean, how valuable is that? Is that something people should be doing? Is that something people should maybe be wary of, because perhaps it's kind of opening up a scrape into a cut, which might become a gushing, blood curdling, problem. What's your view on that?
Yeah, and I understand sometimes businesses are like, oh, we're holding things together just here, and we're getting through it. We know we need to deal with that, but we can't deal with it at the moment, and I understand that. But ultimately, that kind of thing needs to be dealt with at some point. So, mental health first aid, England and Scotland, but obviously down here, is a very, very good service. It's what needs to be recognised is, what is it? What's it for? And it's there to get people who are interested, and people who have been chosen, hopefully interested, of course, in mental health, and interested in the community system and the culture within the business, to be able to be that first line level of support, to be able to signpost and recognise, to be able to spot early signs of symptoms of stress or ill mental health or poor emotional well-being, whatever it is. So it's a fantastic system and works very well. But businesses can sometimes fall foul of, right, we've got our mental health first aiders, that's done, we can get on with doing what we need to do. Yeah. And just recognise how important it is to integrate that properly. And actually, Mental Health First Aid England, I know for a fact anyway, are doing a lot in terms of growth, in terms of building on what they're doing as well, and making changes. But from a business point of view, that's kind of phase one.
Kind of entry level, yeah.
Yeah, and how robust is that, and how robust, importantly, is it from that point that the mental health first aiders, for example, are able to call on specialists to come in at that particular point. Yeah,
makes sense. Great. Well, thanks very much, David. Before we go, you've mentioned the new online portal and course. Do you want to give that another plug with the web address, and then any other links or emails or anything like that, Twitter handles, so people can contact you?
Yeah, no, of course, I appreciate that. Thank you. So the new online individual B2C program, if you like, is Feel Good, one word, feelgood.drm, Delta Romeo Mike, drmgroup.co.uk. And the normal business website is drmgroup.co.uk. And my email, if you'd like to email me directly, is david.mclean, which is MCLEAN, @drmgroup.co.uk. And more than happy to answer any questions. Any questions that anyone has, no obligation. Just if somebody would like a bit of a chat, it's fine.
Yeah, and I can vouch for David. He's a good listener. You wouldn't have gathered it today because he's been doing all the talking, of course, because of the setting. But he's a very good listener, and certainly recommend reaching out to him, whether on an individual basis or if you're looking for some help with your team and overall performance. Okay, David McLean, thank you very much.
Thank you.